Well, is Diddy about to walk away untouched from one of the darkest scandals in modern history? Sean Diddy Combs, you know who we're talking about, the once kingmaker of hip hop, now stands accused of trafficking, abuse, and running what amounts to predatory empire in plain sight. But if you're watching the trial, you'll see the temperature dropping. It's like this case has totally deflated. Now, our next guest, Lionel from the Lionel Nation YouTube channel, said the government doesn't even seem to be trying. That's what he said the last time we saw him. He said their case was flat, energyless, witnesses silent, DOJ quiet, the court of public opinion distracted. Lionel, what do you think happened here? Do we just not care anymore? Is this a blip?
Well, the best way, dear friends, to tell you what happened is to tell you what I would do if I were doing the closing tomorrow. Just to explain, understand what the jury is doing. They have been deluged with this tsunami throughout the entire time. They don't know what it is. Imagine if I were to show you a puzzle, but instead of showing you the box, I just throw the pieces out at you and say, here, put it together. It's supposed to look something like this. That's what I would do. I would start off by telling them, folks, this was debauched. This wasn't criminal. The central argument they're going to, I hope, use is that this case is about the moral disapproval of Diddy's lifestyle, not about the proof of federal crimes, not about anything beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. I would say, try to convince the jury that while Diddy may be guilty of excess and the most vulgar of lifestyles or even immorality, he is not guilty of, and here's the word, orchestrating a criminal enterprise or trafficking anyone. Count one, RICO. By the way, stop me anytime I get excited about this. Conspiracy, attack the enterprise, and the predicate acts. You heard this week there were some dismissals. There were some predicate acts. You need two acts to be proved, and then you're on to RICO. So the best argument they could show is that there was no enterprise. This wasn't the mafia. This was a celebrity entourage, a posse. Notice, Clayton, how I say posse for those of you who were doing closed captions. This is not a crime syndicate. I would also there's two elements here, relatedness and continuity. These are what they're going to be told. Argue that the alleged effects, these events, drugs and sex and money and all this, were isolated, not part of a coordinated plan. That's critical. Undermine then continuity. That's another key aspect of this. Show that these incidents were episodic and chaotic and abusive, but not organized or systemic. Undermine this. Show that the involvement of others. Say that nobody was employed in a criminal network. Friends, girlfriends, staff. They voluntarily presented themselves in this weird kind of a TMZ orbit of fame and excess. And the line would be, a party house isn't a racketeering ring. Hugh Hefner, Playboy, orgies. That's not what we're talking about. The second aspect, sex trafficking.
But even that, Hugh Hefner's, that wasn't illegal, right? Nobody was held against their will.
That's what
Everyone
I'm saying.
went willingly. Yeah. So they're
That's
just
exactly
so
right. Absolutely. It was the Playboy. It was an orgy. It was consensual. It was depraved, but so what? Whatever depraved means in today's version of this. But the trafficking part is you have to show that there was force, fraud, or coercion. And if you can attack, or remember, just make the jury have a doubt as to consent and intent. Say that these were adult relationships. They were messy, they were toxic, they were sick, they were manipulative, they were horrible, abusive, but they weren't trafficking. You demean the notion of trafficking. Show that agency and participation was in question. You know, these victims, many of them remained in relationships with Diddy afterwards. They took money, they accepted gifts, they traveled by choice. There was no commercial sex arrangement. It wasn't forced or brokered or anything like that. It was intimate. It was not transactional in the legal sense. And I keep hitting them. Force, fraud, or coercion. Did the victims ever call the police? Were there threats or just power imbalances or disproportionate influence? Did the prosecution prove any intent to exploit? I would say this was seduction. It wasn't sex trafficking. And then you've got to explain a couple of things too. Finally, the third, The Mann Act, transportation for prostitution, the trying to attack the intent of the definition, say that nobody was trafficked across state lines for prostitution. This was a private relationship. This wasn't pimping. And go after what prostitution is. Was sex ever offered for money? Was it part of a consensual, romantic celebrity lifestyle? And just basically show these people that what we're talking about right here is something completely different, that it may be horrible, and that you have been the product of a fraud. Your lives have been dismembered to sit here so that the federal government could throw this at you, hoping something would stick. The only way, and remind them, the only way this gets to be federal is if you can prove racketeering. This isn't the Gambino crime family. This is to the Gambino crime family what the Junior League is to organized crime. It's a fraud. Make them angry and have the juries go back and say, what was that all about? Remember what you see on TMZ and Harvey Levin and all this baby oil stuff? That's great for TV. But if you've been sitting there and you've got 3 specific charges, you get kind of pissed off. And that's what I would do, to tell them you have been played.
Right.
Where has the prosecution, do you think, totally dropped the ball? I know you were on right after the trial started, and they were bringing on his ex, girlfriend or fiance, and they're going through that whole process, and you thought, that's how you're opening this thing? That's a disaster.
Do you think their heart was ever in it?
Honestly, no. Because remember, this was the Biden administration. Now, I don't know what that means. They brought this. And they also were, can you imagine the pressure they were into from other people? Let me tell you something. If they would have told me, theoretically, you do anything you want, you bring any name from, I'm just saying this, from Clive Davis to Stevie Wonder to Jay-Z, you prove this case. You put people on the stand. That's one thing. But who did we have? It reminds me of the Epstein case. Who did they put on? Ghislaine Maxwell. How did you start with this huge Kennedy assassination and put on one person? I can never understand, was it deliberate? Did they throw it? Are they incompetent? But my friends, the best way to do it is to simply make it as simple as possible. I've got 3 witnesses. I've got 3 charges. That's it. And when they didn't even proffer a piece of evidence, I thought it was brilliant. Remember, the line is, I don't have a duty to prove anything. I don't have any burden. They didn't prove anything. What am I going to do? Put a witness on and maybe cinch some fact which they didn't close? I'm not going to say a word. I'm going to make you eat your words. It takes one bit of reasonable doubt to derail this train. I don't have to prove anything. And Diddy's going to be sitting there. And who knows? Remember, if you're not there, did they like him over the course of this? You've got to see there and watch the eyes. You've got to see there's a look of contempt. Is he Jeffrey Dahmer? Or is he kind of like, he doesn't look that bad with his white hair, looking rather innocent. You never know that, because these people are, and also they're from Manhattan. They're here. This isn't Bug Tussle or Hooterville. They live in a world where you can walk out the street and see severed heads and naked people, and that's just from the court personnel. So this is a different world. So thank you, Clay. But this is a different world. Ultimately, it's a theme you get. Just like when you go to a movie and you loved a movie, It wasn't one scene, it wasn't one actor, it wasn't the lighting, it was a feeling you got. And if these people walk by and they say, that was it, remember, I'm throwing pieces of the puzzle. I'm not putting it together. I'm not showing you clearly. I'm throwing everything at them. And to think that how many of them have been disgorged from their family and their friends and their work to sit there through this. And now at the end, when it hits them, remember the Peggy Lee song, Is That All There Is? That's what this is. Is that all there is? And if it is, it's called acquittal.
Right. I mean, if your case is, look, he had prostitute men in thongs and high heels, then the Manhattan jury is like, that's outside. We see that all the time. So what's illegal here? Boy, is that the sign of the times or what?
But there's more than that. Also, it's not just that. You have to show something a little bit more. You know, when they're talking about people who came forward and they were rehashing things where he had already settled. I'm not sure how much of this actually came out. He tried to make amends. Hell, he gave millions of dollars to these people. He's not skirting justice. Sue him. Anything he's trying to do. I mean, again, and we always have to, it's almost like this Seinfeld thing, like, not that there's anything wrong with it, but everybody's got to always say, you know, I don't like him. I don't know Diddy from a hole in the ground. I don't know anything about him. That's not the issue. If the thing is, you got to be asking, think, dear friends, with all that you have mentioned, Clay, you mentioned the auto pen, the BBB, the Hunter Biden, the lawfare that was exacted and directed towards this president. Do you mean to tell me that the best means of operations, the best platform to address justice in the prior administration is to go after Diddy and a sex party? With all that was going on, it's either these people are like focused on this. This goes to show you almost the kind of like I wish you could work this into a political argument, which you can't, but this goes to show you the mindset of this prior administration. They have no sense of priority. With God, the cartels, the people, the real mafia, none of this applies. And it's just, it's sickening. And I'm telling you, if they don't get one of those charges knocked out, or a reduction of something, or you can move for a motion for a judgment of acquittal or some type of post-conviction, they're going to reverse this on appeal. And there's this 403 evidence where the evidence that was adduced was so prejudicial. Cassie, how many times do we see him beat the crap out of Cassie? What the hell does that have to do with anything? It's horrible. I'll stipulate. How many times? Baby oil. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals is going to be saying, this was unnecessary, this was unnecessary, this was unnecessary. And meanwhile, the jury says, where's the trafficking? Where's the beef?
Right.
So it's a dog, plain and simple.
A dog. All right, we'll leave it there. You can follow more on the Lionel Nation YouTube channel. More of this and other
He was right.
Consequential. Yes. Well, I mean, it's not over, but I think,
we'll see.
Yeah, it's not over until Lionel sings. And so you can sing later. Hold, please.
And he's not a fat lady.
Yeah, he's not. All right. Thank you again for your time.
A fat lady Lionel? That would be amazing.
No. I'm not going to do that.
Thanks, Lionel.
Nope.